Okay, everybody, my guest on the show today, I was just telling her, first of all, we've never met until about, 14 minutes ago, which is such a fun experience as a podcast host, because sometimes I interview my best friends and sometimes I interview people that I'm like, oh, this person's awesome and I can't wait to learn. So everything I'm going to learn about you and we're going to learn about you is real time. And my guest today, is Sam Patil. She's the CEO and founder of Well Traveled, which is a members club for travel lovers. You're an avid traveler yourself. I am a travel lover. Used to be an avid traveler. We have a 1-year-old, which makes for misery traveling. We will be avid travelers again. And I'm just delighted to have you on today. Sam, welcome. Thanks for being on today.
I love that. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Traveling with a 1-year-old. I don't think there's anybody who can tell you how to do that. It's just, he's at the age where it's just not fun because he's not old enough to plop a screen in front of him for 3 hours. And we live in New York. So we always, if we're going out west, but he's also old enough that he wants to move the whole time, which is not a good combination for air travel at all.
Yeah. It is interesting. I feel like we're seeing more people try to do it. And so it's like, we have a few members actually that have done it. And people are like, well, how did you do that? Tell us everything. You came out the other side of it. Like, what did you do? Where did you go? What airline did you fly? What toys did you bring? So it's, they get a lot of hits on those posts around writing that type of content.
Yeah, I can imagine. And how did you also keep your kid from pissing everybody off?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, Sam, let's get to know each other here. So first question is, what's something you nerd out about? And I'm just going to take travel right off the table to start. That's just way too easy. So what's something else you nerd out about?
So I come from consumer tech. And so I find consumer apps just generally like really fascinating, especially ones around social and community, just based on sort of how they've evolved and how like social, like the idea of a social network has evolved over time. And, how we kind of started with like Facebook, for example, and the whole idea behind social media was like, okay, Sam and Jason, you guys know each other. Therefore, maybe you have similar interests. So we're going to serve you up content that's really similar to you. And you kind of created this social graph. But now what's happening, and you have this like evolution of the internet, is like, that doesn't really work as well anymore. And so what you've seen is like TikTok. You asked me what I nerd out about, and I'm just nerding out about it, by the way. So now you have like TikTok that's come along and said, actually, instead of focusing on your social graph, we're only going to serve you content that's like hyper relevant to you in terms of like how you engage with these videos, what you do, how long you watch it. Do you send it to a friend? Do you skip it? And what's really funny now is you're seeing that they are actually bringing the follower page, like your community page, sort of back to the front again, because like you kind of need both at this point of like, you need a social graph, you need an interest graph. And I just think like the evolution of this digitally has been fascinating. And then what are the implications for like in real life? Because I think we're so obsessed with our screens and that digital world that the real life part is so important. So like the metaverse is like interesting, right? But I'm interested in like, how do you take those digital communities and like translate them to offline experiences? Because I think people still really, really want that.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about Well Traveled at some point. That seems to be very aligned with what you do for a living.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I could talk about that forever because it's like, it's just fascinating to me, like just the evolution of the internet and like how we kind of communicate within these different frameworks and like how it's evolving.
I was taking a look at your bio. Like you worked at some consumer app brands, including what some people would say is a social brand. I don't know. Do you consider? And you know what I'm talking about. Well, we'll say people looking on LinkedIn, you worked at Snap.
Yeah.
So that I mean, that's a social, right? Because you're sharing things.
It is. Yeah.
It is interesting.
Yeah. It's a different, like, they have a very different approach, which I think has definitely, influenced my approach to my own product building. but it's for sure social. It's really about like fostering like human connection and getting people to like play and like enjoy the world like with their friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's see, Sam, what's something that's inside of your comfort zone that you know other people won't do or dislike doing?
I'm one of those crazy people that likes to run marathons and like half marathons.
Uh-huh.
So I've only done one full marathon, and true to form, it was in Paris, which was awesome.
That sounds pretty awesome.
It was awesome until the last 2 or 3 miles, which are all on cobblestone, which was just kind of like messed up. But, you know, I get it. Like, you know, there's a lot of cobblestone in Paris. But it was pretty incredible. But I do a lot of like half marathons. Just because, I don't know, I love it. I definitely get that like runner's high. Like I've done one across the bridge. I did the Nike women's one, and I've done like a few others. And I really love it. And I love like running. I'm like one of those people that loves like the working out for me is like a pushing yourself to sort of like an exhaustion is such a great like stress reliever.
Yeah.
And a good thing for like mental clarity too. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The endorphins, just more clarity. Do you, so as somebody who's an avid traveler and also a runner, are you the person who's always has the running shoes and the running gear? And like anywhere you go, you're like going for a run.
Yep. I was in London last week and I had my running shoes and I just walked out the door and was like, I'm going to go run. And I ran along the river, and it's such a great way to see a new city. Like it's not for everybody, of course, but if you do like running or you're open to it, it's a really fun way to just kind of like cruise around and like get the lay of the land.
Yeah. So I heard this on a tour in London a few years ago, and I don't know did you go out to Windsor Castle? Or Eton,
no,
where
I
the
didn't.
Eton private school is?
But I'm from over there. That originally I was born in the UK. And
you are? Okay.
Yeah, in Ascot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
According to the tour guide, and I think this is probably true, that the reason that the marathon is 26.2 miles is because the original one for the Olympics was where the Eton, where Eton is, the private boys' school. And there is something about that route. And I think it went around Windsor Castle, and there was the 0.2 in miles somehow equated to the exact route. And that's how it became 26.2 miles. Cause I think the original isn't. This is what I hear. I'm not, like we can do a fact check. Yeah. I didn't either. And I was like, that's interesting, but they claim that this is the thing because they have a plaque there. It's like the site of the original marathon. Cause it was like in the London Olympics or some time when it made sense. So, anybody who wants to do a fact check on this. So we were just talking about Armchair Expert where they end the show. The host of that is Dak Shepard, and his co-host, she calls it the fact check. Yeah. And also they do this on some other podcasts. So they're like, so you said this thing. So let's see if that's true or not. And then sometimes it's not true. So I'm not going to fact check myself. And I believe that's correct. But if somebody wants to write in after listening to this, be like, you're full of it, I will blame our tour guide in London
there we go.
For that. It's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah. It's always someone else's fault.
If I'm wrong, it's never my fault.
Blame shift.
Yeah, exactly. So Sam, what's the opposite of that for you? So what's something that's like just outside of your comfort zone, something you won't do, something that's really scary for you, and other people are like, yeah, that's cool. I totally would do that, or I like doing that.
I mean, so one of the things that's kind of funny about me is I'm actually a very introverted person, but most people don't see that or even believe it because I've gotten very good at being, very outgoing when I need to be. I don't love it. Like, I don't love walking into a room and having to talk to people. And like some people love that, right? Like my husband is just, you love that? Okay. Yeah. He is like a natural extrovert. He's I want to talk to everybody.
Yep.
So he's a good sidekick a lot of times. Right. But he's so good at it too. Right. And so I've taken a lot of like lessons from him of like just how to get better at it because it is so important. And I think unfortunately sometimes people think that, okay, I'm just going to work super hard, be really kind of isolated and just work really hard and I'm going to get to what I want. Nope. That I typically have found that to be misleading. I think you need people to support you and you can't do everything by yourself. So you really, really do have to invest in cultivating a strong network and supporting that network. But it really takes like, I have to kind of, you know, like amp myself up and be like, okay, I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I'm going to go to this event. And like, usually I'll like set some kind of like goal, like, okay, you're going to go talk to like 5 people that you don't know. And once you kind of get over the fact that like most people there are also kind of uncomfortable, like talking to new people. So once you kind of just get over that and put yourself out there, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? Right.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you talk to 5 people, you end up talking to 10, you kind of roll with it and you get in your groove. But it's definitely like, it's for me then like draining. I kind of go back and like the next night I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch my like, you know, Bridgerton and like nobody talked to me. Like I could like not talk to someone for like multiple days. And like, I think my husband went away once and I'd had some really intense work week and he was gone for the weekend on some like bachelor party or something. And he came back and I was like, I don't think I talked to anyone this weekend.
Oh my God.
Like, I think it was just me and the dog the whole weekend. He was like, looked at me like I was like insane. I was like, it was so lovely. Like I felt so energized. And it was funny in COVID because during the pandemic, he was like, I'm going crazy. It's just you and me in the house. There's nobody else. And I'm like, I'm going crazy because it's you and me in the house like all the time. It's never quiet. Like, you know? So
that's so good.
Yeah, that's outside of my comfort zone, but I do it anyway.
You do it anyway. Yeah. At least you do it. You know, a lot of people, what's out their comfort zone, they won't do. Yeah. You're describing, this answer comes up sometimes on this show. And I'm the person that is in my sweet spot. Like a room of 100 people I don't know, or showing up to interview somebody on my podcast, I have like zero, like it's just like fun for me, pure fun.
Yeah.
And also being in rooms of people is very energizing for me. So, and I actually had my friend Katerina on the show a couple months ago now, and she calls herself a super friendly introvert. And she's very friendly. She's very like light and bubbly, but she's quite introverted. And we did a whole episode on what introverts and extroverts should know about each other. And
I love that.
Yeah. And one of the things she said is like, I can show up just like you can, but I got to rest afterwards. And I'm like, I can show up and act the same as you, and I need no rest. And it's actually more energizing for me to continue to spend time with you. So how do introverts and extroverts, how do we actually like set each other's expectations? And Sam, the second thing I'm going to say about this topic is you have once again proven what I believe to be a fact of life, that people that get married always have the, when are we going home and do we have to go home?
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, totally. I'm tired. It's PJ's and Bridgerton time, and your husband's probably like, one more drink, babe. And you're like
100%.
Yeah. There's like every married couple, you can ask that and somebody's like, I'm that person and I'm that person. I don't know many married couples that are both like the people that are out all night or like the total extroverts.
Yeah, they're probably like taking over the world. I don't know. Like
or annoying everybody.
Yeah, or closing down the bar and like
close down the bars.
Getting kicked out. Yeah, maybe.
Exactly. Awesome. All right, so let's talk about like an important topic to you. And the way I like to frame this question is I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So everybody in the world's listening to this podcast, which I wish. I'd be doing this podcast from my like 100-foot yacht if everybody in the world is listening to this podcast. I'm not. I'm in my office, a little studio, but it's still great. So I give you 5 minutes. Everybody's listening. Sam, what would you give a 5-minute speech on, and what would be your call to action at the end of that speech?
I would probably give, and this is potentially self-serving, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would give a call to action to get outside and spend time with friends, family, travel, take a walk down the block, like go somewhere in your own neighborhood that's new or different, go to a new country. Just put yourself out there outside of, yes, your comfort zone, but just outside of more like your familiarity zone. Because I feel like it's really easy for people. There's obviously like the internet is a complicated place right now. And I think it's really easy for people to feel some sort of intense, like negative emotion towards someone or something if they don't understand them. And part of the reason I do what I do when it comes to travel is like, I genuinely believe that we would be better off the more people are able to meet and just connect with people that are different from them, have like a different perspective from them. Maybe because people don't really know how to disagree anymore. It's either
so
like,
true.
like I'm right and you're wrong, and therefore I hate you. Like there's not really an in between. But I think just the more we can go out and just meet people, like share a meal with them, a conversation, even a kind gesture, you can just build more empathy for other people. And you realize like we're really all much more alike than we are different.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense why you have such a passion and work in travel as well. As you were saying that, I was thinking about anybody I've ever talked to in my life. I've never heard anybody say, boy, I'm really sorry I took that trip, or I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry I went. And I have heard people say that, but it's not because they took the trip. It's because the trip went horribly wrong, or like it was just a bad experience. But I've never met anybody that I've ever heard say like, like going to that other country and learning about a culture was not a good experience for me.
Yeah, right. I have not heard that either.
Yeah, I think it was late last year. I had a gentleman named Scott Marshall. He's the CEO of Semester at Sea, the company that runs that program. If you know Semester at Sea, fascinating.
Great
and
program.
What's cool about that travel experience is it's for college students, and you get on a cruise ship and you go to locations around the one that they were doing. It was an interesting conversation around COVID because it still was like a lot of the COVID stuff. If you want to talk about safety procedures for COVID, listen to that episode, what they had to do to actually sail. But we talked there about just that experience for college students to be able to go to these different places and travel together and get that experience and not just do it in one place. Like most people travel abroad, like study abroad, and they do it in one location usually. And to get to go to 5 or 6 different places around Europe, just so amazing. And like the amount of people that do it. So that makes a ton of sense. Like that seems very aligned. Self-serving only in that like you believe in it. Like that's what all I heard is you believe in the power of that truth and getting out there. What's a place that you're going to go next that's a little outside your comfort zone?
I don't know if it's necessarily outside my comfort zone, but I've never been before, which is to Croatia.
Yeah.
I would love to visit Croatia. I've just heard incredible things. Obviously gorgeous place. And a lot of our travels revolve around like food, like talking to people.
As they should.
Mm-hmm. One of my husband and I's favorite things to do when we're traveling, and maybe this is like a travel tip, it's to go chat with the bartenders at restaurants or hotels, because they typically are so plugged in to like the food and nightlife scene in the cities. And they're not like a concierge where there's necessarily any type of incentive for them to give you any kind of recommendation. And if you sit there and chat with them, like most people are like kind of rude to like bartenders and stuff. Like they want their drinks, they kind of walk away. But if you sit there and they're like, hey, where are you from? They usually like have really fascinating stories and will give you really great recommendations for things to do. So that's just like something we love doing when we travel.
Oh, such a good tip.
Yeah.
You reminded me when we set up this interview, I thought to myself, I'm not letting you off the air with a bunch of great travel tips.
Yeah, there's your first one. Okay.
Not enough to have us not want to do well traveled, but enough to be like, but that is a great travel tip. And my friend Mike, he worked in the United States, and then him and his wife went down and worked at St. John, and he was a bartender at a restaurant in St. John. And he said he like that. And he was so plugged because we went and visited them. He was so plugged in. He knew like, on this night, this band plays here. This is the thing. This is where you don't want to go. And also because that's such a tourist location that he said there were a lot of really rude people, including a lot of Americans, which is kind of sad, more than sad, but par for the course. All right, Sam, we're going to take a very brief commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Sam. So what else do you want us to know about you?
It's a good question. I think travel's been part of my DNA since I was really young. I was really fortunate that my parents, travel was a big part of their lives. So I was born in England and I moved to the US when I was 10 years old. And I don't sound British, I sound American. But the thing is, when you move somewhere when you're 10 and you talk funny and you have like a Spice Girls backpack and you're just like, hi, I'm from Great Britain. You're not cool. People just think you're kind of a freak. So I hated my accent. Kids are mean. And I got like teased a lot. So I would like actively try to get rid of it. And I was successful in that endeavor because now I sound like I'm from LA, which is where I live now. But, as a kid, we traveled all the time. My mom was a travel agent in her past life, and my dad traveled like 3 weeks out of the month for work. And so it was something I was just exposed to when I was really young. And I think, my parents were really intentional about wanting me and my sister to like feel uncomfortable and like know that we weren't the only people that existed in the world, as you tend to do think when you're a little kid, right? Your whole world kind of ends right in front of your face.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. And it's something that I think I'll definitely do with my kids in terms of just kind of forcing them to get out there and get uncomfortable and be in different places and meet new people and things like that.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you miss your accent now?
Yeah, I'd be so much cooler. I have a cool
I'm not
British
gonna
accent.
lie. I'm not gonna lie. I agree with that. The British accent is one of the greatest things on the planet.
Right. It's so good. I feel like I'd sound just super smart and like really put together. My parents
Posh.
have their accents. Yeah. My sister has her accent. She went back to England for college. So I'm just the odd one out here.
Yeah. Are you, and so you're a British citizen?
I am a British citizen. I'm also a New Zealand citizen, which is where my mom is from. And then I do have a green card for the US. My sister is like a secret agent. She was born in the US. So she has 3 passports.
Yeah.
Which is pretty unique, I think.
Yeah. All with the same name, hopefully.
One would hope.
One would hope, but well, maybe not. It depends on what. Maybe she actually is a secret agent. Then she's got all sorts of aliases.
To the best of my knowledge, but
yeah. And then you mentioned that you're married. So are you married? Well, what is your husband from?
So interestingly enough, each of our parents are from a different country. So I mentioned my mom's from New Zealand. My dad's from England. His dad is from India and came to the US when he was 18. And then his mom is from Latvia and was brought over when she was very young by her mother.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but your children are going to have they're like, what's your background? They're like, all 4 corners. That's amazing.
Yeah, we've got it all covered. Right.
That is wow. I don't know that I've ever met anybody who has that direct lineage that spread out.
Yeah.
In a good way. That's super cool.
Yeah. They're all like whatever first generation immigrants, which is so fascinating. And what's funny is they like love each other. They were literally all just at our house last weekend for my husband's birthday is this weekend. And I think there is this just like shared camaraderie about being an immigrant and having these different experiences. And like, there's this funny story my husband's dad tells of like, he came from India and so he didn't eat beef. And when he came to the US, like someone was like, oh, do you want a hamburger? And he was like, yeah, great. Like thinking like ham, like pork. And they were like, no, that's beef. And he was like, huh, okay. Well, I guess
did he
now
eat
I eat beef. Yeah. Cause he was like halfway through it.
And he was Hindu.
Yeah. Right.
Interesting.
And so now he's kind of, he went through his own transition. He was like 18 at the time when he came to the US. And now he does eat whatever he wants, but he was like, just these cultural things that you like have to just learn or figure out coming to a new country. It's really interesting.
I'm just thinking, Sam, that what you've ended up doing, like it's almost preordained based on your background. And then also marrying somebody with such a wide, like such a cool, wide purview in the world that it's just super cool. I come from the exact opposite. Like both sides of my family have a pre-Revolutionary War.
Oh, wow.
So like Northern European, like, you know, my mom likes genealogy. So she did either 23andMe or one of the ancestry.com. And we actually tracked it. Like both sides were here before America was actually a country. So people like, where are you from? I'm like, we're actually American, I think. I mean, like originally like Scottish and French, but like we're talking, 400 some years ago. That's so cool.
That's very pretty cool too, though. That's
well, it's funny.
Incredible you can trace it back that far now.
Yeah, it really is. And then on my wife's side, my wife doesn't know her father, doesn't know anything about her father, and then her mother is first generation Norwegian. So my wife is half Norwegian and half no idea.
Yeah, wow.
You have to do a DNA type of thing. Very cool. So this is the part of the show where you get to play the host and ask me something. And since we're just getting to know each other, I have no idea what's coming. I've had all sorts of things thrown at me. So yeah, what can I answer for you and for everybody listening?
I would like to know, what do you like to do for fun?
Podcast and work. I'm being facetious. Well, I actually do like the podcast for fun. It is one of the questions I get on the show a lot. And nobody's ever asked me this, by the way, which is such a fun get to know you question. And nobody's ever asked me, what do you like to do for fun? There was some people try to get really clever and like try to, not like a gotcha, but a lot of people ask me, why do I do the podcast? And the truth is because it's really fun.
Good.
That's it. That's why. I've shared this on the show before. If anybody out there wants to get into podcasting to be like a celebrity or do it, like, you have a long road ahead of you. It is a very challenging thing to monetize in any meaningful way. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but if you're not famous already, there's just so many of them. But what do I do for fun? So podcasting, I play guitar. I'm a big NFL person. By the way, congratulations. Nice. I don't know if you're a Rams fan.
I am the worst sports fan ever. Because I'm not really a sports fan. I know. I'm sorry.
I am from Minnesota, and we haven't had a championship since 1991 in any professional sport. So when I meet people that literally are world champions right now, I'm just like, do you understand?
I'm sorry. I'm breaking your heart. Yeah.
You are breaking my heart. Have you been to SoFi?
You know, I haven't gone yet. I really want to go.
It looks amazing.
It looks incredible. Like,
except for the guy who drowned there last week.
Well, yeah.
Whatever that was, but
I've heard the food and everything is pretty awesome. And it looks like they've done an amazing job. So I want to go. I mean, there's so many cool venues in LA. We're very lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the Hollywood Bowl is like another really, really cool place to see a show.
Yeah. So I was going to say, what else do I do for fun? I'm a huge music person. I play guitar and I love live music.
Amazing. I love live music as well.
Yeah. What's the last
favorite
concert
show
you've been to?
Oh, okay. You got there first. Last concert I went to was Galantis at the Red Rocks.
Nice.
Which was
I haven't been to Red Rocks.
It's super cool. Even just to see anybody there, it's just an amazing venue.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
Yeah. So I'll give you I just saw a show 14 days ago. I saw Dead & Company at Bethel Woods, which is the original site of Woodstock.
That's incredible.
Up here in New York, in upstate New York. It's actually where Woodstock took place in 1969.
Wow.
It's an outdoor amphitheater, 15,000. So you can imagine a Dead & Company / Grateful Dead outdoor show. You can imagine the vibe.
Yeah.
There is no fighting.
Really fun.
Really fun. Amazing. And they played for about 4 hours too. It's a vibe. So that's the last show. That was a couple weeks ago. I'll share with you, because we're talking about music and what I like to do for fun. My wife and I and some friends, we're going to Keith Urban in a few weeks in New Jersey. It's an outdoor amphitheater. We like country music. And then the highlight of my summer is I'm taking my daughter to the Encanto concert.
Whoa, that's going to be so fun.
Yeah. Have you seen Encanto?
Movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
We're huge Disney Pixar people.
Yeah,
like,
we are too. We are too, both because we like it, but also because we have a 6-year-old. Encanto, you don't have a choice with a 6-year-old. It's like it's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're doing a live tour. I don't know if it's coming to LA, but it's like an orchestra tour where the movie and then they play all the songs.
Those things are so cool.
Yeah, so we're gonna do that's coming to Bethel Woods too, and like in August. But yeah, I've seen a ton of live music. I love live music. I'm gonna go to I think Rage Against the Machine in the fall at Madison Square Garden. I want to go to Pearl Jam, but the tickets are outrageous. And
really?
Outrageous. outrageous because everybody, there's too much money. It's like New York and LA, there's too much money and they haven't been touring for 2 years.
They know people will pay. Someone's going to
pay like $5,000 to see Pearl Jam. They're like, who cares?
Yeah.
So huge music person. We are big travelers. Like I mentioned, we have a 1-year-old, so we don't travel as much, but we'll get back to traveling soon. And then, I mentioned I love people. So I like doing like we have a lot of parties and things like that. Yeah. And then because I'm getting old, one of my favorite things to do is hang out with our dog in addition to the family. We have a 1.5-year-old golden retriever who's just the best ever.
We have a Labradoodle and he's the love of our lives.
Yeah. Brilliant. Very smart. Yeah. Our mother-in-law has a Labradoodle. My mother-in-law. So yeah, those are some of the things I do. And then I'm also a huge film person. So I love watching like, good film. Going to movies.
What's a good movie you saw recently?
Yes. I actually saw Black Phone last night, which I really liked.
Really?
The Black Phone.
I don't think I can handle it. I can't.
It's a Blumhouse, so it's kind of horror. It's more of a thriller, but I'll tell you before that, just like most people I know, the two best movies I've seen this year, and then we're going to take it back to you, is obviously Top Gun Maverick is phenomenal.
I saw it twice in theaters. I wanted to see it a third time. I couldn't find anyone to go with me. It's so good.
Did you see it in IMAX?
No, it wasn't in IMAX, but it was.
I really wanted to, but yeah, that movie is so good. And then
just well done.
Really incredible film for those who can stand a lot of like blood and guts is The Northman. Really good.
Yeah, my husband watched that. I was kind of like, "What are you?"
It's really violent,
and just like was like, "No, unsubscribe, can't do it." It was like some super violent thing, and I was like, "Nope."
It's like Game of Thrones, right? It's like
I couldn't do that.
But really well done, beautifully shot. The other movie I'll recommend everybody listening is Worst Person in the World. It was up for
I've seen this. Okay.
It was so good.
Good. Okay, I'm going to add that to my list.
Yeah, it's Norwegian. Norwegian. And it was up for it was actually up for Best Original Screenplay, I believe, in like the normal category at the Oscars this year, not even as foreign film. And then it was up for definitely for best foreign film, but it's like kind of a love story, but like really it's about relationships. It's really, really clever. Some sad, kind of a comedy, really good.
Okay. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm going to do one plug for Elvis.
Okay. I haven't seen it.
It's honestly weird. Like Austin Butler is just like, this is going to like, I think put him into like superstardom. It's like you're watching Elvis. I like really knew nothing about Elvis. Like, again, like my parents are British. It's like not as much part of like our culture, but it was just like, and like, it was a fascinating movie, and just like his performance is incredible.
I like Baz Luhrmann. I mean, I love Moulin Rouge, and
he was the perfect person to do this.
Yeah, it's great. I'd like to see it soon. Yeah. It's on the list, and I heard he's probably going to be nominated for an Oscar. Austin Butler,
he should be.
And then I heard Tom Hanks is like kind of not good.
He just like, you're not even paying attention to him because you're like hypnotized by Austin Butler. It's wild.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It's a good movie.
We'll have to start up a film podcast. And
I mean, I could geek out about this all day too.
Yeah, so you're like sports, no film. We're going to be
film and music. Yeah,
film and music. That's awesome. Is your husband same? Does he like film and music as well?
Yeah, he likes film and music. We're like big Marvel geeks, so we go see like every Marvel movie. Which I was like, you're lucky. Like, I feel like not that many wives are like down to watch Marvel movies, or at least like a lot of my girlfriends are not into it. And like
my wife is not either. She literally might be the only person in America who hasn't seen Endgame, nor could she care less.
I don't think any of my friends have seen it either. I'm like, I'm going to Thor, and they're like, what? Why?
Yeah,
it's awesome.
They're like, no. All right, Sam. So ad lib question here as we're talking about movies. Bring it back to you. Who do you most identify with as a Marvel superhero? Like for yourself, who's your Marvel superhero avatar?
I mean, I would love it to be Captain Marvel because she's amazing.
Save the world.
That seems like the best one to me.
Do you actually identify with her?
I think so. I mean, I feel like she's like a little bit of like a misfit initially and like underestimated, which like I kind of appreciate that. And then just is like very determined and like resilient.
And women saved the planet. She's like
a total badass. So.
Oops, sorry. Somebody's like, oh, don't ruin it. I'm like, if you haven't seen Endgame by now. as I think it's the
Fun
top
viewing.
grossing box office movie of all time now. Like,
Yeah.
forget it. Like,
Yeah.
the good guys win in the end. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So, Sam, other than, let's see, travel, Marvel, music, film, your dog, what else are you passionate about?
I am really passionate about, aside from all those wonderful things, helping other women, especially female founders. So that's how I've built a lot of my network, is just connecting with other women that are doing really cool things and trying to figure out how I can help them, and learn more about what they're doing and get their name out there. Because I just want to see more women out there building amazing companies, because there's plenty of them doing it.
Yeah. I have another podcast called Talking to Tech People. I launched it this year just because, again, I love podcasting.
Yeah.
And I just had a really delightful woman from, she's a female founder from the Netherlands, and I'd actually like to connect the two of you who'd be interested.
Yeah.
She, and her company had a brilliant idea, and they have an app called Peekabond, and it's for parents and grandparents to connect with young children. And it's like it's an asynchronous video messaging app. And they give you a curriculum that like grandparents could say like, hey, today you can send your kid this thing. And it's really cool. And she created it because she's in the Netherlands, and her sister and her two nieces live in Australia. And so that was the problem that they had, is like, well, you have FaceTime, you have Zoom, and quite frankly, little kids get bored.
Yeah.
So it's a way to actually do it. And the brilliant thing about it is, as you're sending messages to the kids and the kids look at the video messages, it records their reaction. So that the grandparents can see like, oh, this thing is so cool. It's really cute. So
that's really cool.
I bring this up because I've actually had quite a few female founders on tech founders on that show. And they all say the same thing. They're like, I really want to support more female founders. And I work with some female founders and coach some of them at both privately, but also at a community called Round, which it's a tech community, membership community. And we have quite a few female founders joining. So I think there's definitely an uptick in the percentage. And at Round, we're really committed to having more diversity. Like one of the core things is diversity in tech, including more women.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because when you look at our Round community and they're like, we need more of this, more of that, I won't call out what the this and that is. I'm like, this looks exactly like it would look like if you went to Meta or Snap. It's like the same. It's almost like the same ratio and dynamic. So yeah, very cool. Yeah, women in tech for sure. I was sharing you, my wife is not a founder, but she's a woman in tech.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's great. What's the thing you're most proud of?
I would say our team, the team I built at Well Traveled. They're so awesome. There's 7 of us, and soon to be 8. And hiring is really hard, whether you work at a startup, whether you own your own business, whether you're a founder. So finding the right people that are motivated, energized by what you're doing, but also work super hard. And I typically think that you can teach smart people how to do anything. So I tend to err on the side of like passion, excitement for the business, and hire from that perspective. But they're just incredible people. We're an all female team at the moment. And they're really just, I feel very lucky to be able to work with all of them every day.
Yeah, that's I'm going to ask you a question that I ask on the tech podcast with founders. And I always ask them, once you get past the skill of the job, like the technical part of it, right? What's the number one thing as a founder that you look for in your next team hire? Especially this is a good time, right? Because you're past the first 2 or 3 people that are just so critical to the success. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody's still critical, I'm sure, but you've gotten to the point where if you've got 7 people rocking and rolling and you've got the 8th who doesn't work perfectly, you can maybe withstand that versus you got 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard to withstand. What's the number one trait that you're like, this person has to have this thing that's a way they show up at work outside of the technical and experience?
I don't know if I could pinpoint one thing, but I would say being curious, being kind, and being driven. Those are somewhat similar. Like Snap has a similar approach around like, just like being a decent human being, but also being a really curious person. And then, like being really driven to want to help create change and like move the company forward. Cause, at a startup that's very much, it's a lot of like, you can take on as much as you want to take on, but there's like real impact that you can create. And that's like the cool part about being at a startup is you can do something on a Monday, see it go live on Tuesday, and see like a member give you like positive feedback on it, like on a Friday. And you're like, I did that. That's so cool.
Yeah. They're like, they interacted with my service. They paid for it and it had product market fit and it's working because they're re-upping their subscription and they're getting a lot of value. Yay.
Right.
Like it's so good. What, is everybody on your team all big travel people as well?
Oh,
Is that kind of requirement?
Yeah.
Not a requirement, but like they have a passion for travel.
They do have a passion for travel and just like the mission of the company. I think for a lot of them, the pain point we're solving was like a personal one for each of them too. Just because they love travel so much. Like most of them have either had like, 10 years experience in the industry. One of my team members has a tattoo of an airplane. Like we are very...
Is she an airline person?
She was, she's been in travel for like 10 years and she's been on the agency side, like the travel agency side.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Or like they've just been personally like a big traveler for a long time and just like kind of the same things that we talked about, right? Like I've seen like the positive impact it can have for people and want to make that more available for people and like help create some like joy around that like planning and discovery process.
Yeah. So let's talk now about Well Traveled. We've been dancing around it a little bit. So you are the founder of let's talk about what Traveled is. So people listening are like, what does that mean? So let's start with what's the problem that Well Traveled solves? Because you start a company based on the problem, and then tell us more about it because it's so cool, and I've never heard of anything quite like it.
Yeah, so it was definitely a personal pain point. When I was in my past life, I was working for different consumer brands and helping them launch their marketing operations internationally. So I was traveling quite a lot, and then personally was also traveling a lot, and I just felt like I could never find relevant recommendations or recommendations I could trust from people who I felt like I connected with or shared my consumer experience. And I think a lot of the reason for that is you can't really like filter your feedback on a lot of these platforms that exist today. They were also designed like 20 years ago by a bunch of men. And yet women are really the ones that are controlling the purchasing power in this space. Yeah. I realized there wasn't really anything out there that was tapping into community, which is like so important when it comes to travel, because a lot of times you want a recommendation from like a friend or a friend of a friend. There has to be some layer of trust there, right? So that's kind of what I was seeing is this like erosion of trust across all of these platforms. Like, like I've been to some of like the number one spots on TripAdvisor and it's usually not good. And it's just that everybody has their own personal interests, right? So there's just not a lot of like personalization that comes with these sites. And it was so funny. Like I was on Twitter yesterday, which I hate, but it's like a lot of tech people are on Twitter. Yes. And someone had posted, hey, does anybody have recommendations for like coffee shops in San Francisco? And people had just kind of jumped in, started like peppering all these responses. And then this guy, Chris Messina, he's like a big guy on product launch. And he responds with, what do you like? And I was like, yes, like, that's the question that you have to ask first. Like, so often is that kind of just completely overlooked of like, what do you like? Like, what do you want? So that's like very much kind of how I was like thinking through all of this. And I was like, I want to build something that really makes this process, one, like more fun, because it's kind of takes a lot of time to do all this research for travel planning, and just, gets you excited for your trip, because I've just never felt particularly inspired on TripAdvisor. So that was really kind of the perspective that I was coming at it from. And then, there's a lot of masculine energy in that space. And I wanted to design something that was really from a female perspective with that consumer in mind.
Nice.
So like everybody's welcome to join the club, but most of our members are women, actually.
I think my wife will probably be a member very shortly.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. One thing I want to say before we start to wrap up is, speaking of England and TripAdvisor, when I was there on a trip one time, I like doing bike tours. I hate running, but I like doing bike tours. I just think it's an awesome way to see cities.
Yeah. It's cool.
And I found a bike tour and it was great. And I think it was the number one bike tour in London. And I was talking to the guy who owns the company. He's like, if we go to number 2 on TripAdvisor, our business is dead. Like it's dead. Like we see like a 50% reduction in thing, because they had somebody write a bad review, and like however that all ranks. And yes, TripAdvisor is great. I actually use TripAdvisor all the time, but I would prefer to get more of some like like not even a local, like, hey, I know Sam. I trust Sam. I know that we have similar interests.
Yeah.
Like for example, like, hey, what's a cool place to go and run? Like you can, in some cities now they have like these running clubs. You can go and like, hey, we'll take you a tour and we'll run. Like I'd rather hear that from you than hear from some big thing. Very cool. I'll post a link to Well Traveled, all the good stuff in the show notes. Check it out. Very cool. Very cool. I love it. And I love the community aspect of it, because travel is so much more fun with the community, like social and community and all those things.
Totally agree.
You got time for a couple more quick questions for us?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. What's something you're afraid might be true about you?
Oh, that I'm a workaholic.
Are you afraid that might be true about you, or do you know that to be true about you?
Probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably pretty close to being true. I do try to I have a word of the year, and my word of this year is presence. So I try to be really present with what I'm doing. So if that's, recording this podcast, or like making dinner, or, talking to my team, and I try to be like intentional about my time, because, otherwise as a founder, and I'm like a little introverted, right? I could just crank all night long, but that actually ends up not being the best use of time.
Yeah. As a fellow dog person, there's no better demonstration of pure presence than when your dog is happy to see you, because all they are focused on is like you.
Yes.
At least for about 5 seconds, and they're like, there's something else. But for when you walk in the door, they're with you 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
true.
love that. All right. So Sam, how do you see the world? And this is a little bit of a meta question for somebody who works in travel. So yeah, how do you see the world?
I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I see us as much more alike than we are different. And I think there's a lot more commonality between people than we realize. And I caution people about being too focused on their digital life, because you'll miss your actual life. And so I just hope that I kind of think there is going to be a bit of a snapback actually from this focus on digital. And, I think there's a difference between the metaverse and AR and the applications of that. Cause metaverse is sort of its own entity versus AR is actually sort of experiencing the world in a heightened sense. But I just really think that as human beings, we're not really designed to just be sitting indoors on our computers all day.
No.
We're explorers, right? That's what we did. We're designed to go and, talk to people. And, even me, I think when you go and you land in a new country or a new place or new neighborhood, it doesn't have to be that extreme. Can be really energizing. And so I think we are more connected than we think that we are. And so much of that is in real life connection. It's so, so, so important.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. I'm so glad we made this happen.
Me too.
Thank you so much for being on. Best of luck to you and the team. Not even luck. You don't need luck. Just keep doing what you're doing. We were catching up before. I just want to mention you have an app coming out. So everybody check out the app. It's going to be out in the next few months. We're going to have a full native mobile experience.
Yes.
Very exciting.
Yes. Very exciting.
Very exciting. All right, Sam, last thing as we wrap up for this time around, words of wisdom for us, short and sweet. What do you got for us?
I would say if you're starting something new, or you're feeling like you don't have everything perfect, like don't let perfect get in the way of progress. Is something like working at a startup will just slap the perfectionist right out of you. Yeah. And if you're ever feeling like overwhelmed or stuck, just do something, like take some action. It's a good antidote to feeling, afraid or overwhelmed, is to just take some small steps and just do it anyway, even if you're not ready.
Yeah. I'll wrap with this. I feel like either you've had good executive coaching or you could be one, because that is a lot of times all clients need is what's the very next thing you're going to do?
Yeah.
The very next thing, no matter what. And this actually applies anywhere in life, right? Like no matter what you're up to. Well, again, Sam, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. And best of luck with everything.
Thank you. This was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.